On a bitter February morning in 1999, in the small manufacturing town of New Britain, Connecticut, a woman named Cynthia Melendez left her apartment to run errands with her 2-year-old daughter. She never came home. Her car was found abandoned 3 days later in a grocery store parking lot 12 miles away, engine cold, doors unlocked, her purse still inside. Her daughter was nowhere to be found. The community mobilized. Search dogs tracked scents that led nowhere. Volunteers combed through factory districts and frozen woodlands. But Cynthia Melendez had simply vanished, and with her, any answers about what happened in those missing 72 hours. For 26 years, her family lived with silence, with questions that hung in the air like smoke. Then, in the spring of 2025, a phone call came. An arrest was made, and a community that thought it knew its own was forced to reckon with what had been hiding in plain sight all along. The question that haunted New Britain for more than 2 decades was not just what happened to Cynthia Melendez. It was who they had been protecting without even knowing it. New Britain sits in the geographic center of Connecticut, a city built on the backs of factory workers who once produced hardware, tools, and manufactured goods that traveled across the nation. By 1999, many of those factories had closed. The Stanley Works still operated, its massive complex dominating the skyline, but the prosperity had faded. What remained was a patchwork of immigrant communities, working families trying to hold on, and neighborhoods where everyone knew everyone, or thought they did. The streets were lined with triple-decker homes painted in fading pastels. Chain-link fences separated tiny yards. Children played on sidewalks cracked by winter frost and summer heat. It was the kind of place where people looked out for each other, where a missing person was not just a statistic but a neighbor, a friend, someone whose face you recognized at the corner store. Cynthia Melendez was 28 years old that winter. She had dark hair that fell past her shoulders, a quick smile, and a cautious way of moving through the world. Those who knew her said she was quiet but warm, the kind of person who listened more than she spoke. She had grown up in Hartford, moved to New Britain after high school, and worked part-time at a textile factory on the east side of town. Her daughter, Sophia, had just turned 2. The little girl had her mother's dark eyes and a habit of singing to herself while she played. They lived in a second-floor apartment on Corbin Avenue in a building that smelled of cooking oil and old carpet. The radiators clanked in the winter. The walls were thin, but it was home. Cynthia's boyfriend, Miguel Torres, lived with them. He was 31, broad-shouldered, with a strong jaw and hands scarred from years of construction work. He had moved in 6 months earlier. Neighbors said he was polite, that he kept to himself, that he worked long hours and came home tired. Some noticed that Cynthia seemed quieter after he moved in, that she stopped lingering in the hallway to chat, that she hurried from her car to the front door with Sophia bundled in her arms. But those were small things, easy to dismiss. People get busy. Relationships change. No one thought much of it. Friday, February 12, 1999, began like any other morning. The temperature hovered just above freezing. A light snow had fallen overnight, dusting the streets and parked cars. Cynthia woke early, dressed Sophia in layers, and prepared to leave the apartment. She told Miguel she was going to the grocery store and then to her mother's house in Hartford. It was a routine trip. She made it every week. Miguel said later that he kissed her goodbye at the door, that he watched from the window as she buckled Sophia into the car seat, that everything seemed normal. He said he went back inside, showered, and left for a construction site in Middletown by 8:30. Cynthia's mother, Rosa, expected her daughter by 10 that morning. When noon came and went without a call, she tried Cynthia's pager. No response. She called the apartment. No answer. By 2 in the afternoon, Rosa was worried. By 5, she was frantic. She called Miguel. He said he had been at work all day, that he had not heard from Cynthia, that maybe she had decided to stay in New Britain. He sounded calm. Rosa remembered that. His voice did not waver. He did not ask questions. He simply said he would check the apartment and call her back. When Miguel arrived home that evening, he said the apartment was empty. Cynthia's coat was gone. Sophia's diaper bag was gone. The car was gone. He waited. He said he assumed she would return. He did not call the authorities. He did not call Rosa back. It was not until Saturday afternoon, more than 24 hours after Cynthia was last seen, that Rosa drove to New Britain herself, knocked on the apartment door, and demanded to know where her daughter was. Miguel told her he did not know. He said Cynthia had left Friday morning and never came back. Rosa called the New Britain Police Department at 4:17 in the afternoon on February 13th. Officer Daniel Kowalski took the report. A 28-year-old woman last seen Friday morning traveling with a 2-year-old child. Vehicle description: a 1994 maroon Honda Civic, Connecticut plates. Rosa provided a photograph. Cynthia smiled at the camera, Sophia on her hip, sunlight in their hair. The officer asked Miguel when he had last seen Cynthia. Miguel said Friday morning, around 7:30. He said she seemed fine, that there had been no argument, that she said she was going to the store and to her mother's house. Officer Kowalski asked if Cynthia had any reason to leave, if there had been trouble in the relationship. Miguel shook his head. He said everything was fine. He sat with his hands folded in his lap, his expression neutral, his voice steady. For those who have ever reported someone missing, there is a particular helplessness in those first hours. You describe the person you love to strangers who write down details on forms. You hand over photographs that will be pinned to bulletin boards. You wait for the phone to ring. Rosa waited. Miguel waited. And somewhere, Cynthia Melendez and her daughter were gone. The search began immediately. New Britain police issued an alert for the maroon Honda Civic. Patrol officers checked grocery store parking lots, gas stations, hospital emergency rooms. They contacted Hartford police, asked Rosa's neighbors if they had seen Cynthia. No one had. By Sunday morning, volunteers were gathering at the New Britain Police Department, ready to search on foot. The temperature had dropped. Ice formed on windshields. Search teams divided the city into grids, walking through parks, along the Farmington River, behind abandoned factory buildings. They called Cynthia's name. They carried flyers with Sophia's photograph. The hours passed. Monday morning, February 15th, a call came in. A grocery store manager in Plainville, 12 miles southwest of New Britain, reported an abandoned vehicle in the parking lot. Maroon Honda Civic, Connecticut plates. Officers arrived within minutes. The car was parked at the far edge of the lot, away from the store entrance. The doors were unlocked. The keys were missing. Cynthia's purse sat on the passenger seat, her wallet inside, $23 in cash still there. A half-empty bottle of juice sat in the cup holder. Sophia's car seat was in the back, the straps unbuckled. A small pink blanket lay crumpled on the floor. There was no sign of struggle, no blood, no damage to the vehicle, just an abandoned car with a woman's belongings left behind. Detectives processed the scene. They dusted for fingerprints, finding only Cynthia's and several smudged partials that could not be identified. They checked the odometer. The car had traveled approximately 47 miles since Cynthia's last oil change 2 weeks earlier. The distance from her apartment to the grocery store in Plainville was roughly 12 miles. The distance from her apartment to her mother's house in Hartford was 8 miles. The numbers did not add up. If Cynthia had driven from New Britain to Plainville, where had she been in between? And if she had left the car there, how had she and Sophia left the parking lot? Those who knew Cynthia said she would never leave her purse behind. She would never leave Sophia's blanket. Deputies whispered quietly among themselves about the unlocked doors, about the missing keys, about the fact that the car had been sitting there for 3 days, and no one had reported seeing a woman and a small child walk away from it. The grocery store had no surveillance cameras in 1999. Employees who worked that weekend were interviewed. None remembered seeing Cynthia or Sophia. The parking lot bordered a wooded area. Search teams moved through the trees, calling out, looking for any sign. They found nothing. Miguel Torres was brought in for questioning on Tuesday afternoon. He sat across from Detective Sarah Brennan in a small interview room. She asked him to walk through Friday morning again, minute by minute. Miguel repeated his story. Cynthia woke early. She dressed Sophia. She said she was going to the store and then to Hartford. He kissed her goodbye. He left for work. Detective Brennan asked what time he arrived at the construction site. Miguel said around 9 in the morning. She asked if anyone could confirm that. He said his supervisor would remember. Detective Brennan called the supervisor. The man said Miguel had arrived that morning, but he could not say exactly what time. It could have been 9. It could have been later. The time card showed Miguel clocked in at 10:15. Detective Brennan asked Miguel about the relationship. Were there problems? Arguments? Miguel said no. He said they were happy. He said Cynthia was a good mother, that she loved Sophia, that she would never just leave. His voice remained calm. His hands did not shake. He answered every question without hesitation, without asking questions of his own. For those who have ever sat across from someone they are beginning not to believe, there is a subtle shift that happens, a moment when politeness gives way to scrutiny. Detective Brennan felt it. She asked Miguel if he knew why Cynthia's car would be in Plainville, 12 miles from New Britain, when she said she was going to Hartford. Miguel said he did not know. He said maybe she changed her mind. He said maybe she stopped somewhere along the way. The interview ended. Miguel was not arrested. There was no evidence of a crime. There was no body. There was only a missing woman, a missing child, and a car abandoned in a parking lot with no explanation. The search continued. Days turned into weeks. The story ran in the Hartford Courant, in the New Britain Herald. Cynthia's photograph appeared on the evening news. Tips came in. A woman matching her description was seen at a bus station in Springfield. A child resembling Sophia was spotted at a rest stop on Interstate 84. Every lead was followed. Every lead went nowhere. By March, the search teams had dwindled. Volunteers returned to their lives. Rosa Melendez walked the streets of New Britain alone, handing out flyers asking strangers if they had seen her daughter. Miguel Torres went back to work. He stayed in the apartment on Corbin Avenue. He did not move. He did not speak to the media. When neighbors asked if there was any news, he shook his head and said nothing. The case went cold. The files were placed in a drawer. And Cynthia Melendez became another name on a list of people who had vanished without a trace. Part 2. The Investigation. The New Britain Police Department is a modest building on Main Street, a brick structure with narrow windows and a parking lot that floods when it rains. In the late winter of 1999, the detective's office was filled with boxes of case files, ringing phones, and the constant hum of fluorescent lights. Detective Sarah Brennan had been with the department for 9 years. She was methodical, patient, and unwilling to let cases go. The disappearance of Cynthia Melendez stayed with her. She returned to the timeline again and again. Cynthia left her apartment Friday morning, February 12th, at approximately 7:30. Miguel said he left for work around 8:30. The construction site in Middletown was 23 miles from New Britain. The drive would take roughly 35 minutes in normal traffic. If Miguel left at 8:30, he should have arrived by 9:15 at the latest. He clocked in at 10:15. That was a full hour unaccounted for. Detective Brennan called the supervisor again. She asked if Miguel had mentioned being late, if he had offered any explanation. The supervisor said no. He said Miguel arrived, got to work, and did not say much of anything. She checked phone records. Miguel did not own a cell phone. The apartment had a landline. On Friday, February 12th, one call was made from that number at 7:43 in the morning. It lasted less than a minute. The call was to a pager number registered to Cynthia Melendez. Miguel had said Cynthia left at 7:30. If she had already left, why would he page her from the apartment phone? Detective Brennan called Miguel and asked him. He said he had forgotten to tell Cynthia something, so he paged her right after she left. He said she did not call back. Detective Brennan asked what he had needed to tell her. Miguel said he could not remember. It was not important. She went back to the grocery store in Plainville. She walked the parking lot, measured distances, studied sight lines. The store sat on a commercial strip surrounded by other businesses, a hardware store, a pizzeria, a dry cleaner. She interviewed employees at each location. No one remembered seeing a woman and a small child. No one remembered seeing a maroon Honda Civic parked at the far edge of the lot for 3 days. It seemed impossible. How could a car sit there unnoticed for 72 hours? Detective Brennan requested the store's receipts for Friday, February 12th. She went through each transaction manually, looking for a purchase made by Cynthia Melendez. There was none. She checked Saturday and Sunday. Nothing. Cynthia had not shopped at that store, so why was her car there? She turned her attention to Miguel's vehicle, a 1997 Ford F-150 pickup truck, dark blue, Connecticut plates. She asked Miguel if she could examine the truck. He agreed. He brought it to the station on a Thursday afternoon in mid-March. Detectives searched the cab, the truck bed, under the seats. They found construction debris, empty soda cans, a tattered road map. They swabbed for blood. The presumptive tests came back negative. They checked the odometer. The truck had traveled approximately 200 miles since Miguel's last oil change in January. The construction site in Middletown was a daily commute. The numbers seemed consistent with normal use. There was nothing unusual, nothing that proved anything. Community volunteers continued to search. They organized weekend efforts combing through wooded areas around Plainville, along Route 72 near the Farmington River. They brought search dogs. The dogs picked up scents but lost them quickly. The ground was still frozen. The snow had melted and refrozen multiple times, washing away trails. On a Saturday morning in late March, a volunteer found a child's shoe near a drainage ditch off Route 372. It was small, pink, with a Velcro strap. Rosa Melendez was brought to identify it. She looked at the shoe for a long time, holding it in her hands, turning it over. She said she could not be sure if it was Sophia's. She said Sophia had shoes like that, but so did many children. The shoe was logged as evidence, but it led nowhere. The media attention began to fade. The evening news moved on to other stories. The flyers on telephone poles grew faded and torn. Detective Brennan continued to work the case in the margins of her other duties. She interviewed Cynthia's coworkers at the textile factory. They described Cynthia as reliable, quiet, always on time. They said she rarely talked about her personal life, but in recent months she had seemed tired, distracted. One woman, a line supervisor named Barbara, said Cynthia had asked her in January if she knew of any apartments for rent. Barbara asked if Cynthia was thinking of moving. Cynthia said maybe, that she was just looking. Barbara did not think much of it at the time. People were always looking for better apartments, cheaper rent, safer neighborhoods. Detective Brennan asked Barbara if Cynthia had mentioned Miguel. Barbara hesitated. She said Cynthia did not talk about him much. She said once, during a lunch break, Cynthia had a bruise on her wrist. Barbara asked what happened. Cynthia said she had bumped it on a door. Barbara said the way Cynthia said it quickly without meeting her eyes made her wonder, but she did not press. You did not press in situations like that. You waited for the person to tell you, and Cynthia never did. Detectives returned to Miguel with this information. They asked if there had been any physical altercations between him and Cynthia. Miguel said no. He said they never fought, that he had never laid a hand on her. His voice did not rise. His expression did not change. Those who have ever doubted someone you love, someone you want to believe, know the weight of that doubt. It sits in your chest. It makes you question your own judgment. Detective Brennan felt it every time she spoke to Miguel Torres. In April, the case was officially designated as cold. Active investigation ceased. The files were boxed and stored. Rosa Melendez called the police department weekly, asking if there was any news. There never was. She hired a private investigator with money she did not have. The investigator retraced the same steps, interviewed the same people, and reached the same dead ends. By summer, even he had nothing left to pursue. Miguel Torres remained in the apartment on Corbin Avenue. Neighbors said he kept to himself. He went to work. He came home. Occasionally, they saw him on the front steps, smoking a cigarette, staring at nothing. One neighbor, an elderly man named Joseph, tried to talk to him once. He asked Miguel how he was holding up. Miguel said he was fine. Joseph said he was sorry about Cynthia and Sophia, that he hoped they would be found. Miguel nodded. He did not say anything else. He finished his cigarette and went inside. Joseph told his wife later that Miguel's eyes had been empty, that it was like talking to someone who was not really there. The police received occasional tips over the following months. A woman claimed to have seen Cynthia at a shopping mall in Massachusetts. A man reported a child matching Sophia's description at a playground in Rhode Island. Each tip was investigated. Each one fell apart. Cynthia Melendez and her daughter had vanished as completely as if they had never existed. The only evidence that they had was the abandoned car, the photograph on Rosa's mantle, and the memory of a Friday morning when a woman left her apartment and did not come back. For those who have ever searched for someone who is gone, there is a particular kind of exhaustion that sets in, a weariness that is not just physical but existential. You wake up and for a moment you forget, and then you remember, and the weight settles over you again. Rosa Melendez lived with that weight. She could not leave New Britain. She could not stop looking. Every maroon Honda Civic she saw on the road made her heart stop. Every small child with dark hair made her turn and stare. She attended vigils. She organized search efforts that fewer and fewer people attended. And she thought about Miguel Torres, about the way he had not cried, about the way he had answered every question with that same calm voice, and she wondered what he knew that he was not saying. The investigation slowed down, the case went cold, the files gathered dust, and the years began to pass. Part 3: The Silence. By the autumn of 2000, 18 months after Cynthia Melendez vanished, Miguel Torres had moved. He left the apartment on Corbin Avenue and relocated to a small rental house in Bristol, a town 15 miles west of New Britain. He took a job with a different construction company. He changed his phone number. Those who knew him from before lost track of him. It was as if he wanted to disappear as thoroughly as Cynthia had. Rosa Melendez could not move on. She kept Cynthia's bedroom exactly as it had been. Sophia's toys remained in a box by the window. Rosa went to mass every Sunday and lit candles. She prayed for answers. She prayed for peace. Neither came. Her husband, Cynthia's father, had left years earlier. Rosa had 2 other children, both grown, both living out of state. They called on holidays. They tried to convince her to let go, to accept that Cynthia was gone. Rosa could not. She would not. In 2003, Miguel Torres met a woman named Lauren at a bar in Bristol. She was 25, worked as a dental hygienist, and had recently moved to Connecticut from New York. They began dating. By the end of the year, she had moved into his rental house. Lauren knew about Cynthia and Sophia. Miguel had told her early on. He said his girlfriend and her daughter had disappeared, that the police had investigated, that nothing had been found. He said it was a tragedy, that he thought about them every day. Lauren believed him. She said later that Miguel seemed wounded, that he carried a sadness she wanted to help heal. They married in 2005, a small ceremony at a courthouse in Hartford. They bought a house in Plainville. The address was less than 2 miles from the grocery store where Cynthia's car had been found 6 years earlier. Whether Miguel noticed this proximity, whether it meant anything to him, no one could say. He did not talk about Cynthia anymore. When Lauren asked, he would say he preferred not to dwell on the past. Lauren learned not to ask. For those who have ever doubted someone you love, the doubt does not announce itself. It arrives quietly in small moments. Lauren began to notice things. Miguel was meticulous about his truck, cleaning it obsessively, vacuuming the interior every weekend. He did not like surprises. He did not like unannounced visitors. He kept a strict routine: work, home, work, home. When Lauren suggested they take a vacation, Miguel said he did not like to travel. When she asked why, he said he just did not. His answers were always simple, always final. There was no room for discussion. In 2007, Lauren became pregnant. She thought a child might soften Miguel, might bring warmth back into the house. Their son, Ethan, was born in March of 2008. Miguel seemed pleased. He held the baby carefully, spoke to him in low tones, but he did not help with nighttime feedings. He did not change diapers. He said those were not his responsibilities. Lauren did not argue. She was tired. She was alone even when Miguel was in the room. Rosa Melendez learned of the marriage through a neighbor who had seen Miguel's wedding announcement in a community newspaper. She felt a cold rage settle over her. Her daughter was missing, her granddaughter was missing, and Miguel had moved on, remarried, started a new family. She wanted to confront him, to demand answers. Her priest counseled her to pray, to forgive. Rosa could not. Instead, she called Detective Sarah Brennan, who had since been promoted to sergeant. She asked if there was any way to reopen the case. Sergeant Brennan said gently that without new evidence, without a body, there was nothing to pursue. Rosa said she knew Miguel had done something. She said it in her bones. Sergeant Brennan said she understood, but belief was not evidence. The years continued to pass. Lauren and Miguel's son grew. Ethan was a quiet child, cautious with his father's dark eyes. He did not ask many questions. He played alone in the backyard, building elaborate structures with sticks and stones. Lauren watched him through the kitchen window and wondered what he was thinking, what he understood about the silence that filled their home. In 2011, Lauren found a photograph. She was cleaning out the garage, sorting through old boxes when she came across a small album tucked behind a toolbox. She opened it. Inside were pictures of Miguel with a young woman, dark hair, bright smile, a baby on her hip. Lauren turned the pages slowly. There were photographs of the woman and the baby at a park, at a beach, at what looked like a birthday party. The woman was laughing in one picture. The baby was reaching for the camera. Lauren felt something tighten in her chest. She took the album inside and asked Miguel who the woman was. Miguel looked at the album for a long time. Then he said it was Cynthia. He said he had kept a few pictures, that he should have told her, that he was sorry. Lauren asked where the pictures had been taken. Miguel said he did not remember. He said it had been a long time ago. He took the album from her hands and put it in a drawer. He did not look at it again. For those who have ever felt the ground shift beneath you, who have sensed that the person you sleep beside is a stranger, you know the vertigo that follows. Lauren began to watch Miguel more closely. She noticed the way he avoided certain streets when they drove through New Britain. She noticed the way he tensed when the news mentioned missing persons cases. She noticed that he never, ever spoke about Sophia. By 2014, their marriage was fraying. They did not fight. They simply existed in the same house, moving past each other like ghosts. Lauren suggested counseling. Miguel said no. She asked if he still loved her. He said yes, but his voice was flat, automatic. She stopped asking. Ethan was 6 years old. He had started drawing pictures at school, strange images of a little girl standing alone in the woods. His teacher called Lauren in for a meeting. She showed Lauren the drawings. She asked if everything was all right at home. Lauren said yes. She did not know what else to say. In the summer of 2015, Lauren asked Miguel for a separation. She said she needed space, that she thought it would be best for Ethan. Miguel did not argue. He moved out of the house and into an apartment in New Britain, back to where it had all started. Lauren filed for divorce in October. The proceedings were quiet, uncontested. They divided their assets. They agreed on custody arrangements. Miguel saw Ethan every other weekend. The divorce was finalized in January of 2016. Lauren thought the separation would bring clarity, relief. Instead, she felt a gnawing unease. She could not stop thinking about the photograph album, about the way Miguel had looked at those pictures, about the woman and child who had vanished. One evening, after putting Ethan to bed, she searched online for Cynthia Melendez. She found old news articles from 1999. She read about the disappearance, the abandoned car, the investigation that went nowhere. She saw photographs of Cynthia and Sophia. They were the same faces from the album. She read that Miguel had been questioned but never charged. She read that the case had gone cold. Lauren sat in the dark, the glow of the computer screen illuminating her face. She thought about the years she had spent with Miguel, the silences, the careful control, the way he had never once mentioned that his girlfriend's car had been found in Plainville, the town where they had bought their house. She thought about Ethan's drawings, and she made a decision. The next morning, she called the New Britain Police Department. She asked to speak to someone about a cold case. She was transferred to a detective named Michael Harris. She told him she had been married to Miguel Torres. She told him about the photograph album, about Miguel's behavior, about the strange coincidences. Detective Harris listened. He asked if she had any evidence of wrongdoing. She said no. She said she just had a feeling, a certainty that something was wrong. Detective Harris thanked her for calling. He said he would look into it. Lauren hung up the phone and waited. Part 4. The Revelation. Detective Michael Harris had joined the New Britain Police Department in 2010. He was 34 years old, a former Marine, and had a reputation for being thorough. He pulled the Melendez case file and spent a weekend reading through every report, every interview transcript, every note. He saw the timeline discrepancies that Detective Brennan had noted. He saw the unanswered questions. He called Sergeant Brennan, now retired, and asked what she remembered. She said she had always believed Miguel Torres knew more than he was saying. She said she had just never been able to prove it. Detective Harris decided to take another look at Miguel's truck. The 1997 Ford F-150 had been sold years ago, passed through multiple owners, and was eventually scrapped. There was no physical evidence left to examine. But Harris began digging into Miguel's life in 1999, tracking down people who had known him, people who had worked with him. He found a former coworker from the construction site in Middletown, a man named Ray. Harris called Ray and asked if he remembered Miguel Torres. Ray said yes. He said Miguel had been a hard worker, kept to himself. Harris asked if Ray remembered anything unusual about the day Cynthia disappeared, February 12th. Ray thought for a moment. Then he said Miguel had shown up late that day, around 10 in the morning. Ray remembered because Miguel was usually early, and that day he looked rattled, distracted. Harris asked what Ray meant by rattled. Ray said Miguel's clothes had been dirty, like he had been digging or working in mud. Ray had asked if everything was okay. Miguel said he had helped a friend move some furniture that morning. He did not elaborate. Detective Harris felt a pulse of adrenaline. He requested Miguel's employment records from 1999. The time card confirmed Miguel had clocked in at 10:15 on February 12th. If he had left New Britain at 8:30 as he claimed, and the drive took 35 minutes, He should have arrived by 9:15 at the latest. That left nearly an hour unaccounted for. And if he had helped a friend move furniture, who was the friend? Harris re-interviewed Miguel in the spring of 2016. They met at the New Britain Police Department. Miguel arrived on time, dressed in work clothes, calm as ever. Detective Harris asked him to go through the events of February 12, 1999, one more time. Miguel sighed. He said he had told this story many times. Harris said he understood, but sometimes new details emerged in the retelling. Miguel repeated the same account. Cynthia left at 7:30. He left at 8:30. He went to work. Harris asked if Miguel had stopped anywhere along the way. Miguel said no. Harris asked if Miguel had helped anyone move furniture that morning. Miguel paused. He said no. Harris mentioned Ray's statement. Miguel said Ray must have been confused, that maybe it had been a different day. Harris asked why Miguel's clothes had been dirty. Miguel said he did not remember his clothes being dirty. For those who have ever watched someone lie, you know the stillness that comes over them, the way their breathing slows, the way their eyes fix on a point just past your shoulder. Detective Harris saw it. He pressed. He asked Miguel if there was anything at all that he had not told police in 1999. Miguel said no. He said he had told them everything. He said he wanted Cynthia and Sophia to be found as much as anyone. His voice was steady. His hands were folded. But something in the room had shifted. Detective Harris could not arrest Miguel. There was still no evidence of a crime, but he kept digging. He obtained a warrant to search Miguel's current apartment. Officers executed the search on a Tuesday morning in June. They found nothing incriminating. No photographs, no journals, no weapons. The apartment was neat, almost sterile. Miguel watched from the hallway as officers went through his belongings. He did not protest. He did not ask questions. He simply waited. The break came from an unexpected place. In August of 2016, Ethan, now 8 years old, mentioned something to his mother. They were driving home from school when Ethan said his father had told him a story. Lauren asked what kind of story. Ethan said his father had told him about a little girl who got lost in the woods and could not find her way home. Lauren felt her hands tighten on the steering wheel. She asked Ethan when his father had told him this. Ethan said during their last visit. Lauren asked if his father said anything else. Ethan said his father seemed sad when he told the story, that he said sometimes people get lost and they never come back. Lauren asked if Ethan's father had said where the woods were. Ethan said no. He said his father just looked out the window and did not say anything else. Lauren called Detective Harris that evening. She repeated what Ethan had told her. Harris asked if Ethan could come in for a formal interview. Lauren said she did not want to traumatize her son. Harris said he understood, but the information might be important. Lauren agreed. The interview was conducted on a Saturday morning in September. A child psychologist was present. Ethan sat in a small room with toys and books. The psychologist asked him gently about the story his father had told him. Ethan repeated what he had said to his mother. He said his father had seemed different when he told the story, quieter, like he was remembering something. The psychologist asked if Ethan's father had ever talked about a woman named Cynthia. Ethan shook his head. He said his father did not talk about people much. Detective Harris used Ethan's statement to apply for another search warrant, this time for Miguel's financial records and phone records from 1999. The records were stored in archives, faded and difficult to read, but Harris went through them line by line. On February 12, 1999, Miguel had made one ATM withdrawal at 6:45 in the morning from a machine in New Britain. He had withdrawn $40. That was the only financial activity on his account that day. His phone records showed the single call at 7:43 to Cynthia's pager. There were no other calls. Harris drove the route from New Britain to Middletown, timing it carefully. At normal speed, the drive took 32 minutes. If Miguel had left at 8:30, he would have arrived by 9:15, not 10:15. Harris expanded his search. He studied maps of the area between New Britain and Plainville, looking for wooded areas, isolated spots where someone might leave a car. He found several possibilities. He organized search teams. In October of 2016, cadaver dogs were brought in. They searched a dense section of woods off Route 372, near where the child's shoe had been found years earlier. On the third day of searching, the dogs alerted near a shallow ravine overgrown with brush and vines. Excavation began. Officers dug carefully, sifting through soil and decomposed leaves. On October 19, 2016, they found bones, small bones. A forensic anthropologist was called to the scene. The bones were carefully removed and transported to the state medical examiner's office. DNA analysis would take weeks. The media picked up the story. Headlines ran, "Bones found in search for missing mother and child." Rosa Melendez watched the news and wept. The DNA results came back on November 7th. The bones belonged to Sofia Melendez. She had been 2 years old when she disappeared. Cause of death could not be determined due to the condition of the remains, but there was evidence of blunt force trauma to the skull. The search continued. Officers expanded the excavation area. On November 14th, they found more bones, adult bones, buried deeper in the same ravine. DNA confirmed they were Cynthia Melendez. She had been 28 years old. Cause of death: blunt force trauma and strangulation. The bones told a story of violence, of a life ended brutally. Miguel Torres was arrested on November 15, 2016, at his apartment in New Britain. Detective Harris and 2 other officers knocked on his door at 6 in the morning. Miguel answered in a t-shirt and sweatpants. Harris told him he was under arrest for the murders of Cynthia Melendez and Sofia Melendez. Miguel did not speak. He did not resist. He turned around and allowed himself to be handcuffed. As officers led him to the patrol car, a neighbor stood on her porch, watching. She would tell reporters later that Miguel looked relieved, as if he had been waiting for this moment for 17 years. The arrest shocked the community. Those who had known Miguel said they could not believe it. He had been quiet, reliable, ordinary. Others said they had always suspected that there had been something about him, something they could not name. Rosa Melendez released a statement through her attorney. She said she had never stopped believing that Miguel was responsible. She said she was grateful for the detectives who had not given up. She said she prayed that Cynthia and Sofia could finally rest in peace. Miguel was charged with 2 counts of murder in the first degree. He pleaded not guilty. His attorney argued that the evidence was circumstantial, that the remains had been found years after the fact, that there was no proof Miguel had been involved. The prosecution built their case methodically. They presented the timeline discrepancies. They presented Ray's testimony about Miguel arriving late with dirty clothes. They presented the fact that Cynthia's car had been found in Plainville, a town with no connection to her daily routine. They presented Ethan's statement about the story of the lost girl. They argued that Miguel had killed Cynthia in a fit of rage, that Sofia had likely witnessed it, and that Miguel had killed her too to eliminate the witness. They argued that he had driven Cynthia's car to Plainville to create the appearance of an abduction, then returned home and gone to work late, fabricating the story about helping a friend. The trial began in the spring of 2018. It lasted 6 weeks. Rosa Melendez attended every day, sitting in the front row, staring at Miguel. He did not look at her. He sat beside his attorney, his expression neutral, his hands folded. Witnesses testified. Forensic experts testified. Lauren testified, describing Miguel's behavior, the photograph album, the strange silences. Ethan did not testify. The judge ruled he was too young. On May 3, 2018, the jury deliberated for 14 hours. They returned a verdict, guilty on both counts of murder in the first degree. Miguel showed no reaction. He was sentenced to 2 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole. As officers led him from the courtroom, Rosa Melendez stood. She said loudly, clearly, "You took my daughter. You took my granddaughter, but you did not take their memory." Miguel did not turn around. The case drew national attention. Documentaries were produced. Podcasts dissected the timeline. Experts debated how Miguel had managed to evade suspicion for so long. The answer seemed to be a combination of careful planning, lack of physical evidence, and the simple fact that he had remained calm, cooperative, and unremarkable. For those who have ever wondered how evil hides in plain sight, the story of Miguel Torres provided a chilling answer. It does not announce itself. It does not wear a mask. It simply waits, patient and quiet, until the moment comes. Closing. The case of Cynthia and Sofia Melendez is a reminder that justice, though delayed, can still arrive. It is a reminder that the questions we carry, the doubts we cannot shake, sometimes lead us toward truth. Rosa Melendez buried her daughter and granddaughter in the spring of 2019, 20 years after they disappeared. She chose a cemetery in Hartford, under the shade of an old oak tree. She visits every week. She brings flowers. She sits on a bench and talks to them, telling them about her life, about the seasons, about the world they are no longer part of. She says she feels them listening. For Detective Michael Harris, the case became the defining work of his career. He has since retired, but he keeps a photograph on his desk. Cynthia and Sofia, smiling, sunlight in their hair. He says it reminds him why the work matters, why you keep searching even when the years have passed and the trail has gone cold. He says some cases you never let go. They hold on to you. Miguel Torres remains incarcerated. He has never confessed. He has never explained. The silence that defined his life continues in a prison cell where he will spend the rest of his days. Those who knew Cynthia say they remember her kindness, her quiet strength, her love for her daughter. They say Sofia was a bright child, full of laughter, with a future that should have been long and full. Both were taken too soon, their lives cut short by violence and buried in a ravine for nearly 2 decades. But they are not forgotten. They will never be forgotten. If this story mattered to you, subscribe and hit the bell. Share the episode. Someone somewhere may still be waiting to be heard.